Ring bolt hitching is a beautiful way to decorate a staff or wheel. Also called coxcombing, it was once a common tie used by sailors to dress up items and parts of a ship. When tying a wheel, a Turk's head knot was used to cover the part of the wheel where the two ends of the ring bolt met. This would firm up the hitch and keep the tied ends from unraveling. Interesting factoid. It's a nautical tradition to use the Turk's head to mark the king spoke of a ship's wheel. When this spoke is upright, the rudder is in a central position.
One of the questions that have come up in these discussions with scientists, how many different dimensions echo from each universe if we are in a cosmos with a capital C in which there is, as Gut at Harvard says, an infinite number of universes, and that every single one of those universes, ours would be one, would have different physics. We are in a universe where the vector of time goes to the future. We could have a universe next door where the vector of time goes to the past. In our universe, we can pick up a glass and we can throw it against a wall and it will break. In the universe where the vector of time went to the past, we could never break it. In this universe, entropy dominates. The winding down of energy to zero, which is violence and war and death. Why are we in a universe that is perfectly thin line created, it seems, to both create and sustain life when it's juxtaposed against so much violence and entropy? Is there a fixed timeline in this universe from the alpha to the omega? And that's exactly what Albert Einstein said. If that were the truth, we would never really truly have free will, because everything that will have ever happened has already existed in this universe. These are some of the questions that began to provoke philosophers, and now we're going to go is why scientists are raising this question. Are we in a computer simulated universe? And would any existence out there, if there were not minds and souls with consciousness creating this computer simulation, if they didn't exist, maybe it's impossible to create a simulation. That question, is this universe a simulation, was debated before a sold-out, packed audience 1 year ago on August 5th, 2016 at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. The moderator was astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. And then across the Atlantic Ocean, the UK's Daily Mail headlined, "Are we living in a computer game?" Some physicists and mathematicians say the answer is more likely to be yes than not, and that eventually the simulated universe theory will even be proved. The scientists on the stage included, from far left, the moderator and astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, director of New York City's Hayden Planetarium, philosopher David Chalmers, theoretical physicist Lisa Randall from Harvard University wearing the sunglasses. To her right was James Gates, theoretical physicist of supersymmetry and superstring theory at the University of Maryland in College Park, and then cosmologist Max Tegmark from MIT, and to the far right, theoretical physicist Zohra Davoudi from MIT. Some scientists and mathematicians are trying to see if the mathematical rules that govern our universe, such as Planck's constant and E equals mc squared, can be replicated. If humans can replicate this in a laboratory, then it is at least possible to simulate a universe like this one. One of the panelists at the April 2016 American Museum of Natural History debate in New York City was James Gates, PhD, professor of theoretical physics, and he has been researching for a long time supersymmetry and superstring theory. Professor Gates asked, how could we discover whether we live inside of a matrix like the Hollywood movie? And he suggests, quote, try to detect the presence of codes in the laws that describe physics. When he looked into supersymmetry equations down to the level of quarks, Dr. Gates has been surprised to find codes that are commonly used to remove errors in computer transmissions to make computer browsers work. The mathematical relationships to those codes is the same at the quark level. Professor Gates asked, why were those codes in the equations that I was studying about quarks and leptons and supersymmetry? They could even be embedded in the essence of our entire reality. If this is the case, we really might have something in common with the Matrix science fiction films, which depicted a world where everything human beings experience is the product of a virtual reality generating computer network, close quote. The Matrix, original 1999 movie, depicts an Earth future dominated by robots created in the 21st century that rebelled against the Homo sapiens sapien ordering them around. The robots in the Matrix forced human minds under control by cybernetic implants that connect to a simulated virtual reality called the Matrix, and that it was indistinguishable from what the human mind and eye saw as reality. Physicist John Archibald Wheeler, born 1911 and died 2008, was an American theoretical physicist at Princeton University, best known for linking black holes to cosmic objects in gravitational collapse and for the simulated universe concept. He's the first. He said, I think we're dealing with it from bit. And those three words by John Wheeler, it from bit, began to be quoted in science papers around the world. He was one of the first physicists to describe the universe as comparable to bits in a computer program, in which everything from quarks to galaxies to humans are a 0 and 1 information system. And in his famous 1990 quote, he said, the it from bit principle symbolizes the idea that every item of the physical world has at bottom an immaterial source and explanation. That which we call reality arises in the last analysis from the posing of yes and no, plus or minus questions, and the registering of equipment evoked to respond. In short, all physical things are information theoretic in origin, and that this is a participatory universe, close quote. At the Recode Code Computer Conference in Los Angeles, California on June 1st, 2016, so about 1 year ago, one speaker was Elon Musk, owner and CEO of SpaceX and Tesla. He was asked about the simulated universe hypothesis, and he said, quote, the odds we are in base reality is 1 in billions, close quote, meaning he thinks the odds are high that we are in a simulated universe. Further, Elon Musk said, quote, 40 years ago, we had Pong, 2 rectangles and a dot. That's where we were. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. And soon, we will have virtual reality. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then the games will become indistinguishable from reality, close quote. And that is why Elon Musk and others from Silicon Valley hypothesize that what we humans think is reality is actually an advanced intelligence's giant computer simulation. Well, what evidence is there that we are living in a simulation matrix? First, artificial intelligence to build robots is now using human brain mapping. Also, virtual reality headsets are being developed to put people anywhere the virtual reality software creators manipulate zeros and ones. And then reinforcing the hypothesis that our universe is a computer simulation are the underlying math rule sets behind everything. Rules include the speed of light at 186,000 miles a second, and NASA Jet Propulsion Lab scientist Rich Terrell says, this universe behaves mathematically from the subatomic to the macro. Quote, it is broken up into pieces of subatomic particles like a pixelated video game. Even things that we think of as continuous, time, energy, space, volume, they all have finite limit to their size. And if that's the case, then our universe is both computable and finite, close quote. So if our universe is a computer simulation, who created the simulation? In 2007, at a conference in Phoenix, Arizona, I met Jerry and Kathy Wills, who have been leading expeditions to what Aymara natives of Peru and Bolivia call Aramumuru, or Puerta de Hayumarca, which means doorway to the lands of the gods and immortal life. The doorway of Aramumuru is about halfway between the Yave district to the northwest and Huli to the southeast. Local Aymara natives in Peru and Bolivia revere the mysterious ancient carved rock door and say it is where life was first created on Earth. It's a solid rock door. Nothing moves, no hinges, nothing moves in or out. But the natives have always called it a door, and it looks like a big door. And the natives say that this doorway leads to another dimension. Many Peruvians and Bolivians are afraid to be even near the Aramumuru doorway because locals claim some people have appeared coming through from inside the rock to outside. And then they later disappeared going back into the rock door. Some even say that they have seen strange, very tall men with glowing balls of light walk out of that solid rock door, explore around the area, and then return back to disappear into the solid rock doorway. And one of those tall men who did disappear in glowing light at the doorway of Aramumuru is Jerry Wills. And he is very tall, 6 feet 9 inches. The date was November 11th, 1998 at 11 p.m. in the evening. Jerry and his wife Kathy were newlyweds, and Jerry was at the solid rock Aramumuru doorway because he had been trying to understand his strange life and the strange places that he was attracted to in Peru. Jerry had been born an orphan in 1953, and as a newborn, he was left to die alone in a cold Kentucky farmhouse. But he was rescued almost miraculously by a nearby couple in another farmhouse who adopted him, and he grew up on their farm. In 1965, at age 12 and a half, on a cold fall day, Jerry was stacking wood at sundown when a silver aerial disc appeared over some tall pine trees. Large pale lights pulsed one after the other around the UFO, going in one direction and then reversing in the other direction, back and forth. There was no wind. Jerry said it had been so quiet, and yet the tops of the pine trees were going back and forth as if there was a strong wind. And that seemed to imply that it was emitting some kind of energy or field that was causing the trees to move. In his mind, Jerry Wills heard a telepathic thought voice from whoever was in the silver craft say that the unseen visitors would return to meet Jerry again in the future. A year later, in July 1966, Jerry was face to face with a tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, extraterrestrial male named Zoe. And he picked this out of a series of many illustrations that I have of blondes and said that was very close to Zoe. Zoe told Jerry that he was from a humanoid civilization on a planet orbiting the star Tau Ceti, about 12 light years from Earth. There were several face-to-face meetings over a 5-year period and a trip aboard the Silver spacecraft. And you can see my laser won't penetrate these screens or reflect off. On the upper far right is our sun, Sol. And then to the, down to the, call it the south west corner is Tau Ceti. And further down, the famous Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2 that are in the neighborhood. These are all a neighborhood of yellow sequence suns around our sun, so they're close to us in our neighborhood. Jerry said that the extraterrestrial Zoe controlled the disk craft with hand-imprinted panels that connected to Zoe's mind. That same concept of alien minds controlling UFOs through hands is shown here in these panels with depressions for six-fingered hands. And these panels were allegedly found along with six-fingered dead humanoids at a UFO crash retrieval southwest of Socorro, New Mexico. And the date that I have been given is May 31st, 1947. The site was not between Roswell and Corona, and it wasn't on White Sands. This site was between Aragon and Elk Mountain at the western end of the plains of San Agustin. The six-fingered and six-toed extraterrestrial biological entities allegedly found there were later autopsied at either Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio or the Naval Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. The conclusion was that the beings controlled the craft with their minds linked through their hands placed in these panels. And this photograph was produced from 16mm film that UK TV producer Ray Santilli in London said that he received in 1995 from the original military photographer. The extraterrestrial from Tau Ceti also showed Jerry Wills a 4-foot black cube that holographically projected the Milky Way galaxy and other parts of the universe that showed different stars in different colors. As Zoe pointed out star systems, he telepathically communicated to Jerry's mind that people on Earth did not originate on this planet. A sentence that was said to me by John Keel, flying back in an airliner in what would have been somewhere in the 1980s. And I remember being so green at this and saying to John Keel, well, the universe must be teeming with all kinds of life, and you hear about all these different types of ETs. And John Keel turned to me and he said, there is very little in this universe except humanoids that look like us, leaving me to wonder after that, because he said, that's it. I won't talk about any other types. I respect John Keel. I think one of the best books ever written is Our Haunted Planet. And I think it's so interesting that what John Keel told me on that plane in the 1980s that I did not understand is very close to what this alleged extraterrestrial from Tau Ceti told Jerry Wills. People on Earth did not originate on this planet. And the implication is that there are a lot of us types with head, arms, torso, legs, and feet in this whole big universe. Zoe said that humanoid DNA is from all over this universe and beyond in many other dimensions that the extraterrestrial Zoe, telepath, were like different frequencies of musical notes, each dimension separate from others, but many dimensions together like a chord of music. You play a C, E, G on the piano, and each note is a different frequency. But then you can hold with the fingers those three frequencies, and you have a chord, and that chord will continue to go on till you play it again, and that we hear chords and music the way I'm beginning to think that we are nestled in many dimensions, and they're all kept apart from each other, just like the C, E, G on a piano. Another teacher in Jerry's life was a Peruvian shaman named Pedro, who was familiar with the Lake Titicaca doorway of Aramamuru. Pedro did not speak English, but through an Aymara translator, Jerry learned from Pedro that the solid rock doorway was a two-way passage between worlds and dimensions. Pedro told Jerry to kneel down and place his forehead in a small, shallow, indented place on the rock, and then to chant a specific tone over and over. After getting the tone absolutely right on a specific pitch, the doorway would open and the chanter would disappear into other realms. Also, Pedro told Jerry he had seen what he called ancient ones come through that doorway. And those beings were very tall, like Jerry's 6'9" and higher, up to 7 feet. Those ancient ones were dressed in regal garments similar to Inca royalty. Pedro also knew that the tall ancient ones would kneel in front of the rock doorway and start singing with their forehead against the rock door, and then suddenly disappear. Listening to Pedro, Jerry wanted so much to see and find out for himself, and by November 1998, right after his marriage to Kathy, the couple traveled to Lake Titicaca in Peru. At the Aramamuru doorway, Pedro taught Jerry Wills how to make 3 different tones that were always to be kept secret. If Jerry could produce the tones correctly, he would go through the big rock doorway to where the ancient ones came from. Jerry described for me what happened on November 11th, 1998, at 11 p.m. in the night, as he kneeled down before the rock doorway, with Kathy watching from a short distance away, and began to mimic the tones that Pedro had taught him. Jerry said the very first thing that happened is that it felt like he walked backwards straight off of a cliff, and that as he went off of the cliff, feeling this terrible clutch in his stomach and his chest, that he began to see stars and galaxies passing by as if he were in a protected bubble moving through the cosmos. And here now is Jerry Wills himself to describe what happened next.
And then it felt as though I was moving through something. I could sense that there was an impedance there. I squeezed my eyes closed because it was just so much pressure, and it was hard to breathe. And then suddenly, I find myself on this floor. I guess it's a floor. It was just a big white, everything was white. You couldn't tell if there was a wall to the floor, to the ceiling, nothing. There wasn't any curvature, there wasn't any distinguishing aspect. Everything was equally luminous. It was just like in a big white cloud. Like I could stomp the floor and feel it in my foot. It felt like plastic. I decided to try to see if there were any acoustic properties. So I started whistling, high notes, low notes. It just was dead. So then I started hollering, is anybody here? And it was just about the second time that I hollered that there was this voice, and it was like it was coming over an intercom. It was a man, and he sounded a little surprised, So I asked him, where am I? And he says, who are you? And so I said, well, I'm Jerry Wells. Where are you from? I said, well, I was at the doorway at Arumuru. He says, I don't know what that is. I said, it's on the planet Earth in the southern hemisphere. And he says, oh, Earth, all right. I asked him what this place was. Where am I? Is this real? Am I really experiencing this? And he laughed, oh, it's very real. I understand your confusion. He said that I was on another world, that it was outside of my universe. So I wanted to understand how that's possible. And he says, well, there are many universes, and you have just passed from yours into ours. All right, so where is this universe? He said, it wouldn't do me any good to even try to explain it to you. I asked him how I'd gotten there. Well, apparently, these folks, whoever they are, had been very curious about the nature of the universe. In order to understand their universe, they tried to recreate, using what they knew, to recreate a model of the universe. But what had happened is that when they had recreated this, their creation had started to evolve. It had evolved up to a point to where it stopped growing. It was quite large, and that they had created another universe, and inadvertently. They weren't planning on doing this. And it had evolved, and it evolved quite rapidly. I said, well, I don't understand this, because we think the universe is billions and billions of years old. He says, well, where you are, you measure time much differently. Time is different in every universe. We've watched for the past, and he was struggling with terms that didn't make any sense to me. For him, it had been, let's say, a few decades. But within that universe that I had just come from, it was billions of years. Time was remarkably different for me than it was for him. He says, all right, you see that in the distance, probably 100 feet from me. He says, just walk towards that. It was this large, black, gelatinous-looking thing just floating in the air. You could see all these pinpoints of light. It was peppered with light in dark areas. And I said, what is this? And he said, that's the universe you came from. Well, this thing, it had these rods that were luminous, like neon. There was little beads of light moving through them, kind of like a fluorescent bulb, overhead fluorescent that gets bad and has like little dark areas moving through it.
I'm holding in my hand the illustration that you emailed to me. You are the figure in the foreground.
Right, about 100 feet away from that thing.
Did you get communication from the male voice about what the rods are doing with this gelatinous cosmic mass?
Well, the rods were around its perimeter. Didn't even look like they were connected to anything. I said, these light rods, what's that? And he says, well, that holds it in place. It maintains the balance. And we think that's the reason why it stopped evolving.
So did they deliberately try to stop the evolution of this universe?
I think so. When he was telling me about this, they were really very afraid that it was going to continue growing and it would just overwhelm them, and then what would happen to them?
So they're in another universe, and they created in this other universe a laboratory universe to test or learn something. And then their laboratory test universe took off somehow and created the universe that you and I and everything in our universe is?
He had told me that they were trying to understand their place within their universe, and that what they had discovered is that they were inside of someone else's universe, just like we were inside of theirs. He says it's just layers and layers. There's very little that separates one from the other. And that's what they had learned.
this 13.9 billion light-year universe from our point of view is inside of the voice in the all-white room universe, and that universe is in another universe. It's like you're describing those Russian dolls that all fit inside of each other.
It's just like Russian dolls. I said, what kind of machine would you use to do this? He tried to explain it. The closest thing that I can explain was what we call the Large Hadron Collider, a big thing over in Europe. This voice, he was talking about how they were colliding particles, and somehow a spark had occurred, and the spark didn't go away. Instead, it started growing. And as it grew, it started accumulating and creating more of itself on its own. He says, think of it maybe as a white hole. Think of it as a place where all of creation manifests itself within these torrents of energy that are moving both inward and outward simultaneously.
If they were trying to experiment in a lab in another universe, trying to create the conditions in which universes come into being and evolve to settle something that they were trying to explore, then they would have to have set up conditions that would have set the rules in whatever universe they were trying to create to test. And it might explain why this universe is like on the edge of a razor blade in terms of the conditions that favor life as opposed to no life.
They had learned that life had started to populate throughout that universe.
They had made.
Yeah, they were fascinated by this, curious as can be how this was possible. And this doorway that I had gone through was something that they had put in place. They had these doorways throughout our universe in various places. They had been sending scientists in there to study the universe because this was a whole new realm of science for them to explore. And when they started discovering life in there, well, they were pretty shocked. Apparently, I'm not the only person who'd ever come through that doorway. And apparently, these doorways go to other places on this planet as well as to other planets. So maybe these folks that were coming through had figured out how to direct their travels. According to this voice I was talking to, there is a way to direct where you're going, but my only concern at that point was, how do I get back?
Okay, is it possible that the beings that Pedro was referring to as a shaman would be the intelligence in this other universe in which we're nested? The other universe would come through to test their laboratory experiment, creating this universe that surprised them because it was evolving with life in it. Anything that was seen emerging from that doorway that you went through would be from the experimenters in the other universe that encompasses us.
I think that that's very possible because, as I mentioned, time is much different there than it is here, and they might have been through and thinking that the Inca or whoever would have succeeded them were dressed in a certain way the last time they were through, so the next time they go through, they dress like that. They're royalty. They can walk around wherever they want to go, and no one's going to give them any grief.
But they're not royalty. They're actually scientists from another universe.
Yeah, exactly. That voice that I was talking to was telling me that part of their interest was that when they looked outward, things just expanded out and out and out, but there were things that were identical out there as there were deeper and deeper they looked into the smallest things, that it was always the same. It's the same if it was an atom versus a galaxy. They were trying to understand their place in the universe. What they didn't expect was to find that there was a universe that they were within and that there was a universe that they surrounded. It was quite an astonishing thing to have discovered for them.
If they discovered that they were inside of another universe and that they had made a universe that they surrounded, then maybe even an infinite number of universes nest within each other.
I think that's what the implication is, that there isn't an upper or lower limit.
And what is the relationship now between their universe and this one?
Oh, I haven't a clue. I could not understand his definition of time. The only thing that I can figure is that the means of moving from one point to another was outside the dynamic of time altogether. That these doorways are instantaneous passageways to other places. You know, you can be somewhere for a while, go back through it, and arrive just shortly after you left.
Which is saying that there is time travel through these doorways that the other universe created in order to study this universe.
When it comes to moving through these things, I don't know how time works. You know, it was the same situation when I was talking with Zoe. He was telling me that they could go from where they are to here, and that it would be almost instantaneous. There really wasn't any time during the time of travel. Time stopped, and then it restarted once you arrived.
What are you left with now, the end of 2016, as a residue of that idea that we are in a simulated universe created by someone else?
What it's left me with is a sense of awe. The thing that I find to be most remarkable is that at least between this universe and that one, there are beings who are aware of themselves and aware of their surroundings. But it is that spark of life that joins us, no matter what universe we're in. I know there's life out there among those stars. Somehow there's a veil. Somehow there's this barrier, this thing that I passed through twice. So this commonality of life, I find that to be awe-inspiring. No matter where you go, there's a spark of intelligence and a spark of life out there, and it can be quite good.
How many of you have heard or read the book, The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot? Maybe half a dozen. Oh, I recommend this to all of you to read. The Holographic Universe was first released as a hardcover by HarperCollins in 1991. Around the same time, I spoke at a Midwest conference along with human abduction researcher Bud Hopkins. The new book by a young man only 38 years old, and its mind-blowing hypothesis that our universe was being projected by something else, maybe from another dimension, was the topic of many discussions at that 1991 conference. A holographic universe is one where all of the information that makes up our three-dimensional reality, plus the fourth dimension of time, is actually contained in a two-dimensional surface that is projecting what we conscious creatures see and move through as three-dimensional space-time. Think of that bank card that you might have in your purse or billfold, and when you do this, it can project up from the card. It projects up because of the relationship of math and construction and photons. After the conference, Bud and I had the same airline flight back east to New York and Philadelphia, where I lived at the time. Bud and I sat next to each other to talk about some new abduction cases, and he surprised me when he said, quote, "I'll tell you something confidentially. Michael Talbot has been one of my UFO abduction cases, but he doesn't know anyone he has not told anyone, and he does not want anyone to know that because he's afraid if people knew the truth, they might not read his book. And Michael told me the truth is that the entire holographic universe concept that he has written about was given to him in a telepathic download by the extraterrestrials who have been abducting him," close quote. Sadly, Michael Talbot died a year later at age 39 from lymphocytic leukemia. And then Bud Hopkins died in 2011. So now in 2017, as there are increasing numbers of scientific papers and headlines asking these questions, are we living in a holographic universe created by a computer simulation? I think it's okay now to tell audiences about Michael Talbot's abduction secret, and hope if you have not read his 1999 book, The Holographic Universe, that you will read it, as more and more scientists are now, right now, trying to figure out if this is a computer-simulated universe. Only 2 weeks ago, on January 30th, well, actually now it's longer than 2 weeks, but on January 30th, 2017, theoretical physicists and astrophysicists from the University of Southampton in the UK and the University of Waterloo in Canada and the University of Salento in Italy published in Physical Review Letters, quote, substantial evidence, close quote, that we are living in a holographic universe as non-human beings told Michael Talbot in the 1980s. And this is an illustration that the physicists used in their new paper formally entitled From Planck Data to Planck Era, Observational Tests of Holographic Cosmology. Time runs from the left to the right. The far left illustrates the very first holographic phase that the scientists think was the true beginning of this universe. Their first two gray ovals are small and blurry to illustrate their contention that space and time were not yet well defined. And then by the third oval of grays, whites, and blacks, the universe enters what the scientists call a geometric phase, which can then be described by mathematical equations such as Albert Einstein's general relativity from the early 20th century. Studying our universe's cosmic microwave background left over from the singularity when the universe erupted in the Big Bang, scientists have been able to detect large amounts of data, zeros and ones, embedded in the white noise or microwaves left over from the moment the universe exploded into this dimension and kept growing. Could it be that the spark of light that Jerry Wills was told about in that white lab room in November 1998 grew to be our universe? Studying that data in the cosmic microwave background, these modern Earth scientists were able to compare networks of features in the data to modern quantum field theory, and doing that, they found that some of the simplest quantum field theories can explain nearly all cosmological observations of the early universe. So in their new paper, they conclude that about 375,000 years after the universe's geometric phase in the third oval of this illustration, they begin to see what they call, quote, imprints of information, close quote, about that very early universe. And the scientists hypothesize that is when the development of star and galaxy structure began to evolve up to what we call the current time, which would be on the far right of this illustration, looking like the dark sky with galaxies in it. And Professor Kostas Skenderas of Mathematical Sciences at the University of Southampton, England, explains, quote, holography is a huge leap forward in the way we think about the structure and creation of this universe. Einstein's theory of general relativity explains almost everything large scale in the universe very well, but it starts to unravel when examining its origins and the mechanisms at the quantum levels. Scientists have been working for decades to combine Einstein's theory of gravity and quantum theory, and some believe the concept of a holographic universe has the potential to reconcile the two. Imagine that everything you see, feel, and hear in 3 dimensions, plus your perception of time, in fact, emanates from a flat, 2-dimensional field. The idea is similar to that of holograms at Disney World. However, he closes his quote, this time it is our entire universe that is encoded, close quote. And now we're full circle back to the original question. Is this a computer simulated universe? This physicist says enthusiastically, yes, we're in a computer simulated universe. Tom Campbell, born December 9th, 1944, says that he has now done more than 400 YouTube videos on that very question. Tom likes to call himself an applied physicist because he never finished his PhD in experimental nuclear physics at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. He broke off from his university work to be a systems analyst with the Army Technical Intelligence in the Foreign Science and Technology Center, also in Charlottesville. It is now called the National Ground Intelligence Center. In 1972, Tom Campbell worked for Robert Monroe, the author of the 1971 groundbreaking book, Journeys Out of the Body. Tom Campbell helped Robert Monroe develop the HemiSync technology for teaching how to go out of body, which Monroe would use in his formal Monroe Institute that he finally established as a laboratory to study consciousness. Later, Tom Campbell worked for the Strategic Defense Initiative, known as SDI, in the Reagan administration, and for a group called Space and Missile Defense Agency. He got out of that in the mid-1990s after working for a decade. And then Tom Campbell retired from government assignments. But he has never stopped working on his conviction that this is a simulated universe by something projecting information from another dimension that caused the original digital Big Bang. Tom is a co-author on a new paper soon to be published entitled On Testing the Simulation Hypothesis. His colleagues are Caltech mathematician Uman Awadi in Pasadena, physicist Joe Savageaux from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, also in Pasadena, and David Watkinson, who produces digital animation of virtual reality simulations in Hollywood studios. Tom Campbell's concept behind this new simulation paper is that our entire universe was simulated by some intelligence to be an entropy reduction trainer for souls. And before we hear from Tom Campbell about this, let me break down those words. Let's start with entropy. It usually refers to the idea that everything in this universe keeps moving from order to disorder, losing energy along the way. This is the second law of thermodynamics that says entropy always increases. It states that as energy is transferred or transformed, more and more energy is wasted. And so there is a natural tendency of any isolated system to degenerate into more and more disorder. The bottom line of the second law of thermodynamics is you can't unscramble a broken egg. So keeping eggs in egg cartons helps sustain order that protects the eggs until you need them. Sustaining order is an example of what physicist Tom Campbell calls entropy reduction. He thinks that the challenge for souls in this universe is to learn how to reduce entropy, which means counteracting disorder and moving toward more order, love, and cherishing life instead of disorder, hate, and killing life. Tom Campbell also thinks that what we humans experience in this universe as hard physical matter is an illusion, that there really is no hard physicality to this universe if we truly understood that the big mysterious computer generating everything is consciousness from another dimension. This is what separates this theory from the holograph. The holographic is some sort of a physical substrate in another dimension that projects, using light and energy, this universe in a three-dimensional way. Tom Campbell thinks that consciousness itself in this dimension is creating everything that is happening. And for Tom Campbell, this dream does not even need holography to explain our cosmos. He wrote a book, 3 volumes, huge, My Big Toe, which is what physicists use as an acronym for My Theory of Everything, published in February 2003, and that all there is computer code computing our reality. Here now is Tom Campbell.
Well, if this is a simulation, who's in charge?
Right.
Who's the programmer? Where is it simulated from? Questions about this being not the reality, but a subset of something bigger. And what is this bigger thing? It brings up all of those metaphysical questions now that suddenly has scientific rigor. If scientific rigor says this is a virtual reality, then it cannot be computed from inside this virtual reality. It has to be computed from elsewhere, from another reality frame. It's computer code that's computing our reality.
If we are living in a computer simulated universe and the projector is outside in another dimension, is the computer projector God of this simulated universe?
Okay, no, the computer is not God. The projector is not God. The player is not God. They're just pieces of this larger consciousness system. So if you have a religious bent, then the individual units of consciousness are souls, and the larger consciousness is God, the source of everything else. Well, where did that come from? I only have two assumptions for my theory. The rest is logic. One is that consciousness exists, and the other is that evolution exists. Evolution just being a process of selection, that things that work go on and things that don't work don't.
Where did the prime consciousness come from?
It created itself.
What is reincarnation, the recycling of souls in all of this?
Well, you start with understanding our purpose here. We are individuated units of consciousness. Our goal is to decrease the entropy of our consciousness. That's so us and our system can continue to evolve. So to create a virtual reality where you can get feedback, where there's consequences. In a tight rule set, virtual reality like ours, everything has consequences. So you get in this entropy reduction trainer we call our universe, and you make choices. And by those choices, you tend to reduce your entropy or grow your entropy. If you reduce your entropy, you're evolving, going forward, and the system then does too, because you're a part of it. So that's your purpose. The whole system wants to constantly work to keep its entropy low so it can continue to exist. Now, it turns out that in the social system of all these individuated units of consciousness, the way you create more information is by cooperation, caring, working with each other, helping each other. I call that the love side. The way that you increase entropy or de-evolve is through non-cooperation. It's all about me. I'm going to take mine, and I'll take some of yours too if I can get it and keep it. That then creates entropy and is de-evolutionary. So we're making choices here, trying to grow up to become love, to become caring, to become cooperative. That's our mission here. So we're consciousness, making choices, we're trying to evolve, which means move us more toward becoming love. So that's what we do. Now, you can't do that in a one shot. It doesn't work. All comes and goes. You take what you did last time and you start with that and you add to it. Learning is that way. Learning is cumulative. You can't just, at 3 years old, take calculus. It won't work. You got to start with arithmetic. So in order to learn, it has to be a cumulative process. So you accumulate through lifetimes and you grow. Every time you go through a lifetime, you decrease your entropy if you're successful a little bit, or if you increase it, you de-evolve a little bit. The next time you get to start where you stopped last time. And that's why we go through these cycles, keeping our system viable and ourselves viable, and our mission is to become love. That's where we're headed.
There is potential irony here that the physicists of this planet will be the ones that corroborate Christ and the golden rule of love and do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Absolutely. That was one of the big kind of strange things that I didn't expect. I'm a physicist, so I'm working at this idea of consciousness, trying to understand it. And when I finally kind of figure it out, and I realize that a lot of the things that are in religious philosophy are actually true. You know, these are people who actually have seen the nature of our reality and how it works. And as they understood it, they had to put it into terminology. So we're consciousness.
Sorry about that.
So we're consciousness, making choices. We're trying to evolve, which means move us more toward becoming love. So that.
And I'll finish the last part. I pushed something. He said, these are people who have actually seen the nature of our reality and how it works, talking about the avatars of history. And as they understood it, they had to put it into terminology that suited their times and other people. You have to communicate in a language that people can understand. And I asked him, well, do you think that the yin and yang symbol is a metaphor for a universe of entropy in which everything is winding down, and that the dark versus the light always seem to be in conflict? The dark and the light always in conflict? Yes. And the reason for that is that's the nature of free will. The reason we have good versus evil is our theme in everything, movies, literature, good versus evil, because that is the key thing. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to evolve in a positive direction. That is love, that is positive. We have those that can make an opposite choice. They have free will, they can choose to be self-centered. So the reason you have evil is because there is free will, not because there has to be an equal amount of evil and good. Now there is a struggle between the two because they are going in opposite directions. The negative part, the ones that are de-evolving, they love and enjoy chaos. Those of us who are trying to work in the opposite direction, we are trying to work against that because that's the nature of evolution. It just keeps chugging, and stuff that works goes on, stuff that doesn't work eventually self-destructs. And that is the nature of our reality frame. So now returning to human abductee Michael Talbot's The Holographic Universe, which he told Bud Hopkins was a concept downloaded into Michael's mind by the non-humans abducting him in the 1980s. While Michael Talbot was receiving information about our universe from an alien intelligence, a brilliant physicist, David Bohm, released a groundbreaking book in 1980 called Wholeness and the Implicate Order, one of the most important books I have ever read in my life. Bohm explained that implicate means an ever-present hidden order that is enfolded into all objects and appearances of this universe, from subatomic particles to huge galaxies. Bohm also concluded that, quote, all mass is frozen light. Recognizing in physicist David Bohm's work the same concepts that the alien intelligence downloaded to him, Michael Talbot wrote, quote, one of Bohm's most startling assertions is that the tangible reality of our everyday lives is really a kind of illusion, like a holographic image. Underlying it is a deeper order of existence, a vast and more primal level of reality that gives birth to all the objects and appearances of our physical world in much the same way that a piece of holographic film gives birth to a hologram. Bohm calls this deeper level of reality the implicate order, which means enfolded, close quote. And he refers to our level of existence, like in this room right now, as the explicate order, which is unfolded from that which is hidden below. Put another way, writes Talbot, electrons and all other particles are no more real or permanent than the form that a geyser of water takes as it gushes out of a fountain. We see a pattern, but the pattern is an illusion from the forces of the moving drops. So for physicist David Bohm, subatomic particles are sustained by a constant influx from that implicate hidden order, the underlying computer code that is enfolded in everything there is. Zeros and ones are the mathematical language of our universe enfolded into the implicate order. In a piece of holographic film, the film is in implicate order because the image is encoded in interference patterns, and they are hidden and folded throughout the whole film. The hologram projected from the film, which is the robot projecting, is an explicate order because it represents the unfolding of the enfolded image. Our universe would be the one out front. Another place, another dimension is what would be projecting us. The constant and flowing exchange between the two orders explains how particles, such as the electron, can shapeshift from one kind of particle to another. Say an electron enfolds back into the implicate order, while another, say a photon, unfolds and takes the electron's place. That would also explain how a quantum photon can be either a particle or a wave. But it is the consciousness of a player in the cosmic computer simulation that interacts with all of the implicate possibilities and determines what does unfold and what remains hidden. All of the constant moment-by-moment unfoldings and enfoldings are why physicist Bohm preferred to call our universe a hollow movement instead of a hologram. Which simulation hypothesis might be true? The holographic universe, Tom Campbell's information and consciousness is all there is, or something else incomprehensible to us humans? One seemingly incomparable insight came to a male abductee working with abduction investigator Bud Hopkins in New York City. I'll call the abductee Paul, the successful owner and manager of his own water quality laboratory in New Jersey. It was his 32nd birthday with his parents, sister, and her husband, and they had all gone into New York City to celebrate over dinner. Around midnight, they were coming out of the city onto the I-95 freeway going south. Paul's father was driving the car. Paul was in the front passenger seat. In the back were his mom, sister, and her husband. Paul's father suddenly asked, "When did they build a restaurant on a tower?" And he was pointing up in the sky to a round group of red lights. And Paul said, "Dad, that isn't a restaurant on a tower. That's something in the sky." Paul's father pulled the car over to the side of the freeway not far outside of New York. And now they were all looking and arguing about what this round, red lighted thing in the sky is. And then, very suddenly, Paul said he felt a physical sensation of splitting into two, with one part going forward and up through the front windshield. And as that part rose, he wanted to see the car, and immediately his rising self just had point of view, looking back down on the car, and he could see his father unmoving behind the steering wheel. He could see his body in the passenger seat, and he knew that his mom and sister and her husband were in the back seat. As his out-of-body self continued to rise upward, Paul saw a red blinking light and headed for it. The red light was above a large donut-shaped craft, and Paul felt pulled downward into the middle of this donut. And then he could see several gray-skinned beings with big black slanted eyes standing in a circle, all looking up at Paul as he is coming down from the red light right into a space that will be right at the center of where these beings have formed a circle. He became terrified and began screaming, trying to paddle his legs as if he were swimming to reverse course and go back up. And all of that screaming and kicking on a sofa occurred in Bud Hopkins' apartment. But Paul ended up standing right in the middle of the gray beings. And then in a jump cut, his memory is that he's lying on a table. To his right, extending out of dark shadows, is a gray-skinned hand with 4 long, skinny fingers wrapped around a silver instrument that Paul compared to an electric toothbrush, but it had a very beautiful sky blue light shining out of the end that was approaching Paul's chest. Paul was a practicing Buddhist, and he believes to this day in mind over matter. So he concentrated very hard on his arms and his muscles, and he managed to put his hands like this over his heart. And then, to his astonishment, his own hands moved away from each other, forming a circle with his fingers right over his heart. And that's exactly when the silver rod in the hand of the alien put the blue cerulean light onto his skin. He felt a terrific jolt, as if he had touched an electric fence. And then the next scene that Paul remembers is being in a room where there was a large 3-dimensional screen of stars and galaxies. And a gray being takes him to look at the screen more closely and points out 10 universes organized in 5 pairs. The ET points to one of the universes and explains telepathically to Paul that one of the 10 universes is ours, and that it is paired with another universe where everything is the opposite. The gray being telepathed to Paul that at the moment of biological death in this universe, our soul enters a tunnel zone to change charge from this universe in order to enter the universe next door. And the way Paul explained it was that negatively charged electrons and positively charged protons in this universe would change to exactly the opposite in the universe next door. That there would be positively charged electrons and negatively charged protons in order for the soul spirit to enter this other opposite universe. Paul said the 3D screen changed from the 5 pair of universes to inside the opposite universe. Now he's in this universe. And what he saw was a cosmic sky that was white with black dots of stars and galaxies. Colors on planets were vibrant, glowing shades of colors Paul had never seen. The gray showed Paul that electrons in this other opposite universe were positively charged and the protons were negatively charged, and that the vector of time in that opposite universe goes to the past, where nothing deteriorated, nothing got old, and nothing could be broken. Paul said the Eben touched the 3-dimensional screen and the 10 paired universes then reappeared. And the gray entity pointed at our universe and telepathed to Paul, quote, "When your body containers in your current universe die, they pass through a dark tunnel to change charge before they enter the all-white light brightness of the universe paired with yours that is completely the opposite of your universe. Your universe, where time moves to the future, is ruled by entropy, where everything loses energy and dies. The other paired universe is ruled by non-entropy, where time moves to the past and everything evolves to young and fresh and nothing dies," close quote. The gray being made a motion with its long gray fingers from our universe in the 3D screen to the opposite universe paired with ours. And Paul told me the finger motion that the Eben used went like this, tying the 2 universes together, and that the gray hand did this, and probably most of you would recognize that as the infinity symbol. Paul also saw scenes come running into his mind of an elderly human soul in this universe, entering this tunnel to change charge, and like it was on a conveyor belt, he saw in this image that the gray was putting into his mind how the soul entered a container body in the next door universe. And then that body got younger and younger and younger and passed back through the tunnel to change charge before that soul spirit from the neighbor universe was born again in this universe. In another jump cut, Paul became conscious waking up in his bed back in New Jersey. It wasn't night anymore. It was a bright, sunny day. He called for his parents, but no one answered. He pulled off the covers and found dirt and leaves inside the sheets, on his feet and on the floor. Confused, he got up and headed for the front door to see outside. And in his bare feet, he walked down the porch steps to the sidewalk in front of the house, and then he began to walk faster, faster. And pretty soon, he was running, and he felt an exhilaration that he had not known for a very long time, because Paul had been hiding a secret from his family. At only age 32, during exercise, he had begun to hurt in his chest and to run out of breath. Instead of going to a doctor, he had cut back his exercise to being nearly sedentary. When he walked on that sidewalk and then ran without chest pain, he could not believe it, and he said to me with tears in his eyes, "The aliens fixed my heart." Today, Paul still works in a laboratory trying to do what the alien intelligence downloaded into his brain from orbs of light in formulas and blueprints for building technology that can neutralize gravity. Recently, he heard that I was working on this presentation about are we living in a computer-simulated universe? And on March 22nd of this year, Paul wrote to me these words. I recall on my 3rd birthday that I was opening a present and inadvertently received a paper cut on my cheek. I cried, and my mother told me to go to the bathroom and place cold water on the wound and to come back with a small bottle of iodine. As I started to place cold water on the painful wound, I had a vision. The vision was of myself before entering this body that I now inhabit. I started to press my face and chest with my fingers while looking into the mirror, and I thought, what is this? I'm solid, and now I feel pain. How did this happen? Close quote. I ran into the living room and said to my mother, why did you put me in this body? Now I feel pain. My mother laughed and said to me, Paul, if you want to live, you must have a body. I became angry and I said, no, that's wrong. You don't need this body to live. Linda, something is very wrong with this planet that we live on. I remember Basil, a science colleague of mine, called it this experimental plane called Earth. Something is experimenting with our type of life form for their benefit without any concern for us. This Garden of Eden is their creation, and they can change the experiment anytime they want to. Look at all the races that have vanished or perished. Perhaps those behind the Garden of Eden found discrepancies in their experiments and simulations here and decided to start over anew by destroying what existed at some point before. How long will it be before the experimenters do the same to us? They could also will us to destroy ourselves. We humans are programmable by the experimenters, close quote. This, if we could go to this next image. This has always meant a great deal to me since I started going to England and investigating crop formations in 1992. This is a spiral labyrinth cut in granite and limestone in Western Europe. And this represents the cyclic renewal of life, the great round of death and rebirth, the journey of the soul in and out of past, present, and future forms. These labyrinths have been found carved on ancient rocks in England, Ireland, the Adriatic Sea region, Hopi Indian lands, Greece, and the island of Crete, dating back at least 4,000 years before Christ. The spiral labyrinth represents the cyclic and the cycles of life. And in my own existence, some of the most dramatic experiences of my life have taught me that everything we see on the surface of the matter world has below it pulsing light. It is a truth to me. It appears that it is beginning to evolve out of physics, that this universe is simulated, and the question we all must try to come to some deep understanding with is who made it and why, and is Tom Campbell correct? Is this an entropy reduction trainer for our souls? Thank you.